Hello, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. This is question time with ea2wo, a very brief segment. We just started doing this. The first question sent, two questions actually, but the very first question sent has to do with something that a lot of us suffer from. It is stress. We're living in a very stressful time. This COVID period has really beaten up a lot of us financially, emotionally, psychologically, and a lot of us are experiencing depression, high level of stress. And so the question came, how do I deal with stress? How do I deal with a great amount of stress, especially when one has so many challenges and yet you have so many things that you want to accomplish? I think it's a very useful question. And so I'll give it my best. Best being the way I cope with stress. So I cannot give, I can't give you a theoretical, generic type solution like you go to a doctor and you say you have a headache and they just tell you to take a Panadol. Everybody's symptom is different. I would rather share my experience and how I cope with my own experiences. I can't say for certain that I deal with stress or I've dealt with stress to a successful point where I don't deal with stress anymore. Stress is something that one has to develop a coping mechanism with regards to dealing with it. So I made some notes and some points here that I'm going to talk about. And the first thing is I just want to read this. It says, stress is internal pressure and serves as a reminder as to what needs to be done, and it all depends on perspectives. Now, let me explain that. If we look at pressure, let's look at a diamond. We want to get a diamond. A diamond comes from a rock. You put a lot of pressure on the rock cracks, and inside the rock is a diamond. So the pressure actually cracks the rock, yes? Now, the application of that pressure can actually be mathematically defined as stress. So let's just use the mathematical definition. The stress applied on the rock based on the pressure that is exerted with the energy of the pressure, hence the stress applied results in the diamond coming from the rock. So if we take that and look at ourselves, external pressure is what creates the internal stress. External pressure creates the internal stress because the external pressure cannot on its own create the stress. The internal stress is created by the owner of the mind. What we call stress is an interpretation of our perspective based on the pressures that we put on ourselves. That sounds a little bit of a mouthful. Let me try and simplify it. If I'm stressed, it's because I have assumed that I have to accomplish something within a deadline and I'm not accomplishing that. Or there are pressures for me to actually meet a particular deadline and I put pressure on myself. The external doesn't put the pressure on me. I put the pressure on myself. So whichever way I combat stress is based on the pressure that I put on myself. This is me saying the stress is me. I'm putting it on myself. Nobody outside is putting the stress on me. They're just applying pressure. Yeah, the pressure they apply is from the outside. The pressure applied is from the outside, but the stress itself is internal. It's me manifesting the pressure. It is me manifesting the pressure. So by manifesting this pressure, I create this internal stress, this internal pressure called stress. Yeah, it's a colloquialism when you look at it in terms of human behavior. But if you look at the mathematical or the physics representation of the stress is more or less the same. So the way I cope with is I understand now at this age with the experience that I've had dealing with so many different events, running a business, amongst other things that I do, having taken all the blows, the losses, I understand being in various relationships, so I can actually look at it from a relationship standpoint, from a business standpoint, which is like your career, your job, your interactivity. You can look at it from a psychological standpoint. You can look at it from a spiritual standpoint. All of these things, all the pressures you apply internally on yourself with regards to expectations to produce the diamond that you want to produce, these are all self-applied. So stress really is based on perceptions that I have inside and guided by expectations that I have from me. This is my own definition, or this is my own representation of the situation. So the second question is, what is creating the stress? I think I just answered that. It's self-imposed. It's one actually looking at the expectations they have, or the expectations to meet a particular deadline. This is all created internally. It is not external. The external pressure is there. You have to pay your bills. You're stressed about it because you are thinking about how to pay the bills because you don't have money to pay the bills, and so you feel the stress. But that pressure is applied outside, it's not applied inside. Your own interpretation of this situation is what puts the internal pressure on you, hence the stress. If you see that different, perhaps the feeling, the side effect of the stress, which could be tiredness, could be, like me, I break out in hives. I've actually had a situation where I break out in hives. It affected my breath. It's actually affected me physically. It's affected my health in many ways. Stress is a killer. So if you look at stress and say, okay, it's a reminder that I have to do something. And this is how I look at it. When I feel all this internal pressure that I've put on myself, this stress, I know I have to get up and do something. Because if there's nothing to accomplish, if there's nothing to be done, I wouldn't be putting this pressure on myself. So usually I look at the things that I have to accomplish, and then I prioritize. I look at the one with the highest reward or the highest value, the one that would bring the highest value, and I try and deal with that first. Now, this technique I learned from a friend of mine when we were both in university, and he says taking exams is not about having all the knowledge. It's about knowing how to take an exam, knowing how to apply the exam strategy. So what he says, this is me now giving a hypothetical. He says, when we go into the examination hall, what you do is, first of all, you take the first 5 minutes and you read the questions. And now, if you know that you require 50% to pass, what you do is initially try and identify the questions that you can answer straight away with what's in your head, instantly, tick them off, and see if the score of all the questions that you've selected, if it's multiple choice, or if it's 3 questions out of 5, can you answer 1 and 1.5 or 1.5, whatever you can answer straight away. Make sure that that initial one that you can answer equals 50%. So if you've done that, you're confident, you've done that, you studied for it, and you can answer that one, you've passed. Everything else becomes a bonus. So the initial energy you have, you actually focus it on trying to answer that 50% to secure the pass. When you've secured the pass, the very next thing you do is because now your brain, you've done the mental gymnastics, so the energy is in a little bit of adrenaline and you're in flow. You can actually remember other things that you have studied, even if you don't remember them very well. If it's a 15-mark question and you answer it well enough, you might get 10, you might get 8. So if you get like 8, 9, 10 in 2 or 3 other questions, next thing you know, you have 65, 70. You have definitely now aced the exam. So that's the method that I use in overcoming my stress. I look for the things that are of the greatest amount of value, what offers the highest contribution to my status quo, and I deal with that first. And then the other little ones, I take them as they come, one at a time, but my main focus would be on the one that brings the greatest reward. All right. So to recap, stress is internal pressure. It's energy applied to get a particular outcome. That's the formal definition of stress. We have used the analogy of a diamond from a rock. Pressures external that result in stress is based on interpretation, perspectives of the external demands and my priority designation. How do I cope with stress? I've talked about that. I have to have a coping mechanism. My coping mechanism with stress is to be, it's a trigger for me. It tells me that I have something that I have to do. And then I sit down, I take a piece of paper like this, and I write down all the things that I have to do. I look at the ones that offer the greatest priority, the ones that have the greatest return with regards to value and with regards to dealing with the situation that I'm facing. And then I work on that. I deal with that first. So a footnote here is, I accept what it is first, then prioritize issue causing stress based on what I want best for me, which is, I'll repeat that. I accept what it is first. So acceptance and appreciation comes in. You have to accept that the stress is self-implied. You can't actually blame somebody else for the stress. You can look at the pressure and identify where the pressure is coming from. That's good. The pressure is coming from here, but the expectation to perform is mine, so the stress applied is internal. And then, like I said, what is best for me? Value, always value. You look in terms of the value of the result, like taking the exam. We talked about the exam as well, taking the exam and knowing which ones would actually guarantee a pass, and then after that, you look for the extra points. So the final note here is, pressure is useful to make the diamond. So it has a function in creating a desired result. So the pressure is necessary, it's purposeful, it has purpose. You can't actually ignore the pressure simply because, that's making an excuse to be irresponsible. It is necessary for us living in this world that we live in to learn to live with pressures and to learn to use it as an indicator that we have to make changes. Remember, life is all about learning. You never stop learning. You only stop learning when you die. And so every single day, it's about the principle of Kaizen. I think I talked about that some time ago. A constant and never-ending improvement. It's about making changes and making mistakes, repairing those mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and preparing for new mistakes. That's the whole process of us being here and being alive and solving problems. What we're here to do primarily is solve problems. So that's the end of today's question with ea2wo. If you want me to answer more questions, please email me, info@ea2wo.com. I repeat, info@ea2wo.com. If you like the videos, please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification button so you get notice when I post new videos. I keep saying when I post new videos. And until next time, thank you very much. I wish you happiness, success, love, light, beauty, everything good. So you can actually cope with everything that is not good. We tend not to use the word bad. Yeah, so until next time, have a good evening, have a good afternoon, have a good morning wherever you are. God bless. Thank you.